everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Gretchen, and today I am here with my first official book review for the 2024 Booker Longlist, and I'm really excited about this year's list. There are so many books that I'm looking forward to reading, and there are so many books that I've already read that I really enjoyed, so I'm really excited to talk about them. I also want to spend some time during this review talking about the fact that this book seems to be getting a lot of hate at the moment. It doesn't really seem to be a well-loved book. I'm not really seeing a lot of positive comments about it so far, and there's a lot of people that are wondering how a book like this made the Booker Longlist, and I wanted to touch on some of my thoughts about that throughout the duration of this video as well. And the first book that we're going to talk about today is going to be Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Now, this is one of the ones I read prior to the long list being announced. I finished this one back in June. I originally picked this one up because I was hearing a lot about it. It was getting a lot of buzz, and this was one that once I started looking into it, sounded to me like it was one that was going to have Booker potential. So I decided to read it, and after I finished it, I did decide to put it on my personal long list. So this was one of my predictions, and I'm happy to see that I got a prediction for this book. But I will talk a little bit later about how I feel about how this book fits in with the rest of the list, so more to come on that. So prior to this book, I had heard about Samantha Harvey. I knew her as a writer, but I had never read any of her books. But I knew that she had a history with the Booker. She was nominated or longlisted back in 2009 for a book called The Wilderness, and that's not a book that I have read, but for those of you that are interested, this book is supposedly about a man that is losing his mind to dementia. So that also sounds like a book that would be right up my alley and one that I would enjoy. But coming back to Orbital, as soon as I learned that this book made the long list, I immediately knew that this was going to be a choice that pissed a lot of people off. Now, I personally enjoyed this book, but I do know or feel like this book has a very specific audience, and I am one of them. But I knew that it was likely a book that was not going to have a whole lot of mass appeal and kind of upset some people, especially because we had a lot of books that were getting a lot of hype, and there were a lot of books that a lot of the booktubers out there thought would end up making the list that didn't. The one that immediately comes to mind is Praiseworthy. I know that there are probably a lot of people out there that are upset that a book like this made the list, whereas a book like Praiseworthy didn't. So yeah, I can definitely see how this book could be upsetting to a lot of readers that were hoping to see something on the list with what they think would be a little more substance. So for those of you that don't know, this is a book that follows 6 people. We have 4 astronauts and 2 cosmonauts from Russia, and we follow them as they are in space on this space station and as they are witnessing a series of orbits around the Earth. And we get their thoughts and their reflections, and we get little glimpses into their lives on Earth and their lives on the space station. And this is not by any means a plot-driven book at all. So if you're the type of reader that is looking for plot, this book is likely not going to be for you. And I'm also gonna say that if you are someone that likes a book that maybe doesn't have plot but has really well developed and strong characters, this book is not going to be for you either. This book doesn't have a lot of character development either. Although we do get a little bit of insight about them, the book is really short, so you don't really have the time, or the author didn't have the time to really flesh out all of her characters either. So I know what you're thinking. So if this book isn't plot heavy, if it's not character driven, what is the point of this book? And I know that that is likely why we might see a lot of reviewers of this book not liking it, because they have that same question. What is this book actually trying to do? Now, as I said earlier, I personally really enjoyed this book. This was a nice, calm, little serene book for me. It was slow paced and it put me in a peaceful state as I was reading it. I just kept thinking about outer space and the vastness of it and how small and unimportant I personally am in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, how incredible Earth is, and about all the creatures it contains, and the flora and the fauna and the weather and the water. And it was just, for me, a needed reminder of how important our planet is to us. And it just made me think about how I can't even imagine how it would feel to witness Earth from that distance, and to know that what I was looking at contained absolutely everything that we are. It's a very humbling and surreal experience for me to think about. And it also invoked all of these feelings of nostalgia for me as well. Now, this happens a lot for me because I'm a sentimental person and I'm a very sentimental reader. And if there's something that I relate to in a book, I often find myself reminiscing about times where I felt the same way that the book was making me feel at the moment. And I just kept thinking about how when I was a little kid, all of those school field trips that we would take to the planetarium or the science center, and sitting in those huge auditoriums in those hard little metal seats that reclined the whole way back and allowed you to stare at the ceiling that they had all of these stars and comets projected on. And it was, for me as a kid, it was a magical feeling, and this book brought that up for me. And I'm not even gonna lie, I still get that feeling as an adult, whether it's at a planetarium or whether it's being camping in the middle of the woods and having access to a clear sky and looking up at all the stars. A few years ago, I took a trip to Chicago, and one of the things I did was go to the Adler Planetarium, and I remember walking into that dark and cold auditorium and sitting in that chair and looking up at that artificial sky and just feeling those same things that I felt as a kid, and how no matter what age I am, I'm always going to be in awe of space and everything that is out there. And I can definitely see the appeal of a book like this for someone like me that has always had that feeling and that curiosity about what is out there. But I also understand how unsatisfying a book like this could be for a lot of people that might not be emotionally connected with what was going on in this book, and that's absolutely okay. And I also think there are going to be a lot of people out there that, although they enjoy this book, they might actually wonder why it made the Booker list as well. If there were other books that deserved to make the list more. And I can say that I would probably agree with those people. That was exactly how I felt about Western Lane last year, so I can understand that frustration. I personally enjoyed this book a lot, but it's a book that's not going to be accessible to every reader, and I think that there are going to be a lot of people upset, as I mentioned earlier, that this book made it over others, but I also wonder if people would have enjoyed this book more if it wasn't on the long list for a prestigious literary prize. Does the label of a prize nominee immediately add some level of expectation or bias to our opinions? I would say probably, and I honestly think that that would be a great topic for Scott over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot to do a video about. He does amazing research in looking into things like this, and I think that this would be right up his alley. So Scott, I think you should get on that one. But in all seriousness, I point this out to say that this is exactly why I love this prize so much. It gets us talking, it brings out our passions, and we end up having a lot of great conversations regardless of whether we like or dislike the book. And I want to know your thoughts on this book if you've read it. Does it deserve to be on this list? And if not, was it a book you read prior to it being longlisted or after the long list was announced? So that's it. That's my first review. I'm working on getting some of the other reviews for the books that I have already read, filmed, and edited, so keep an eye out for them. And if you liked this video, please like or subscribe. I'll be doing reviews for the entire long list if that's something that you're interested in. Thank you so much for watching, and until we read again, bye!